Hey, welcome to Own It Day 7. We're going to peel another layer off our identity and dig into that. And that is the question of what do I value? And it was really hard to choose a movie theme for this topic because there's just so many really good ones to choose. But an iconic one that I think everybody has heard of is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, which famously explores this topic of values and the process by which Ebenezer Scrooge is challenged on his values and is even taken on some alternate reality tours by the three ghosts that visit him on Christmas Eve. And then, of course, we see the transformation of Scrooge on Christmas Day as represented in this classic scene where he is carrying Tiny Tim on his shoulder. So we see this gruff character of Scrooge who values money and success and ownership and above all, and then he sort of gets faced with what that really looks like in his life with relationships and with people that he's been in close proximity with, but doesn't really know or care for that much. So, without further ado, let's dive into the question of what do I value? Okay, let's consider the topic of value and what we value on a personal level. And the question, what do I value? We're going to start with the definition, just so we have that foundation. Value is something of importance, worth, or usefulness of something. A person's principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life, monetary worth, to consider one or something to be important or beneficial, or to have a high opinion of something or someone. Okay, so we have our foundation there. And now we're going to talk about some broader categories of values. And these are just something that I came up with that is easy to understand as we apply these questions and these concepts to ourselves. So, monetary value is one type of value, and this will be how we look at status, abundance within one's life, or how we see others, and that can mean with things, houses, money, cars, affluence. Maybe it's the lack of money or poverty, classism. Do we sort of put people in categories of classes according to monetary values? Property, belongings, income, acquisitions, influence that may come as a result of financial status. And this can be a negative or a positive influence. And it can also be from a place of maybe not having very much or having a lot. And some examples of that would be if you look at somebody in a church or in a leadership of ministry position, oftentimes we will consider them to have more influence if they actually have less or live with a monetary value of placing little value on things and property. We're going to actually trust them more. But then if we have somebody that's the leader of maybe a large corporation, our expectations and how we see them may be seeing, that we would have expectations that they should have a lot, a large home, nice cars, maybe multiple homes. Um, so there's a lot that plays into monetary values and the lenses of which we see not only ourselves, but the world and other people. Moral, these are sort of our broad categories that as a society and a human race, in general, we understand there's a right versus a wrong, some political viewpoints that we have of like freedom versus democracy and dictatorship. So some broad political moral values. Faith has large moral values, and some of these may fit in there, but even if you don't have a religious faith point of view, you may have a belief in the broad moral category of honesty, loyalty, integrity, personal responsibility, compassion, love, kindness, and also some negative moral values like hate and anger, courage, justice, respect, family. These are all different examples. Aesthetic values. These are going to have to do with our physical interaction with the world. Do we have a place value on beauty, physical attractiveness of other people and things, appealing to other senses as well? Smell, taste, sight, music is going to fall in this category. Art, design, nature, gardening, food and drink that we have, harmony, purity. And now we're going to take it into the personal level, and there's going to, again, be a lot of overlap here because, these all sort of tie into our personal values. But that's going to include, and I put a lot of examples here because I want to sort of get your brain going and thinking about what this means. So in our personal lives, our personal values may have to do with family. We value success, time, goals, money, happiness, pleasure, adventure, solitude, learning, physical state, competition, creativity, cooperation, faith, health, nature, order, organization, leadership, curiosity, strength, exploration, safety, security, comfort, ease, challenge, quiet, change, stability, freedom, tradition, consistency, variety, humor, seriousness, power, fame, generosity, saving, appearances, authenticity, being prepared, resourceful, decisive, open, modesty, expression, faith, and the list could go on and on. And there's no right or wrong here. There's no judgment because we're all, as we've been learning, we're all designed and created differently and for a purpose. And we all have different things that we belong to and that we're committed to. And also, as the discussion continues, some of these are going to feel true or right to us and in alignment, and some are going to be things that we have just assumed from our families, our churches, our schools, friends, the workplace, where we've been influenced. And maybe we have assumed values of other people that aren't really our own. So that's why it's important to sort of question and take an inventory of this, especially as we look at our relationship to alcohol. Alcohol is a symptom of a larger problem of dis-ease or discord in our lives. And disease, so I use that purposefully, disease. Now we know that overconsumption of alcohol is not really a disease, but it is a symptom of discord in our life. And this is where it can show up in our identity as we're unpacking it. And so if you have some conflicts either internally or externally in your world, you may turn to alcohol as a quick fix to numb or dissolve that that conflict. And if, let's say, one of your core values on a personal level is modesty and quiet, you're more of maybe you're also kind of an introvert if you've answered that question before. But you find yourself oftentimes in situations, maybe you're married to somebody that is very social and loves to go out, or you came from a family that loves to get together, and you've got some family members that are very expressive. Well, that may be a point of, contention within yourself and in your environment that is causing a conflict with your internal compass and identity. And which, if you're going to have a couple of drinks, you can just quiet that, internal conflict, right? Am I right? Okay, so as we have that discussion, I have a statement down here that also sort of looks at values from a different perspective, which is that values can also be seen as a relationship between a person, that being you and me, and a goal. And just as a compass can guide or give us direction. So that's why it is important to have this discussion with yourself. And here's a great quote by Charles Dickens from A Christmas Carol, and it's very poignant. "I wear the chain I forged in life," replied the ghost. "I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you? Or would you know," pursued the ghost, "the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain." So this chain is a chain of choices and a free will that we each have in our life. And if we don't take an intentional inventory and evaluate our lives, we can find ourselves pulled out to sea, maybe somebody else's sea, and being in somebody else's boat and assuming, faulty programming. I know I'm going all over here, all over the place with analogies here. But I did hear a really good analogy the other day, and it was about computer programming and people that go to school for programming. One of the ways they learn their code is an acronym called GIGO, which stands for garbage in, garbage out. So maybe when it comes to values, maybe there is some faulty programming and some garbage that you have, been passed down from previous generations to you, and that you've just assumed and not questioned. Or maybe you are in a faith community or school or work community that just doesn't feel right. And when you take a list of this inventory and look at these things like values and commitments and how you're designed and where do you belong, you're going to, hopefully things will start to click in place of areas of focus in your life and what may be some of the triggers or the problem you're trying to solve with over drinking. Because often this is a symptom of a bigger problem, and there's something in your life that you're not wanting to look at and you're not wanting to tolerate. And numbing out with over drinking or overdoing of anything or zoning out in front of TV. And a lot of these things we're probably doing all in conjunction with each other. We're doing it to tolerate something in our lives. It is a solution. It's a good solution, but one that has taken its toll on our mind and our bodies. And it is time to, you know what I'm going to say, it is time to own it and reclaim your identity and set yourselves free. So we're going to go on to our next section and talk about some journal prompts and some questions of inquiry and places to get curious in your life. Okay, so for today's journaling prompts, as you journal in your written journals or in your mind's eye as you're moving through your day or walking and pondering, here are a few questions that may help you identify what your values might be. Because they're going to show up in your life if they're not clear to you just immediately. There is a way to figure that out. So some good questions that might help you uncover this are maybe looking at some of your favorite books and movies. And this can be recent or from childhood. I wouldn't focus too much on TV shows because generally with shorter programming, not as much thought or investment of time goes into those. So sometimes we choose things that maybe represent our values, maybe don't. Although if there's some that you definitely avoid, that could be a clue to your values. So, take that for what it's worth as well. And so take a look at what are some of the underlying themes or even values represented in the books or movies and themes. Who are the top 5 people you admire? Why? What is it about those people that draws you to them? And since we're building on the prior few days, there's probably already some thought that you've put into this as you've explored like things like commitment and such for identity. What do you think your values are and why? What would family and friends say you value? Again, why? And this is a really good one. How do you spend your time and money? That is a value trail right there. So if you're unsure, if any of these other questions haven't led you to an answer, check your calendar and check your bank account, and just look around you. What have you spent money on? So there may be some good clues there. What do you teach or talk with your words versus your actions or your walk, and why? And also, are there some things that aren't jiving there, that are out of alignment? Are you teaching, thinking, talking one way, but, in the question before, if your time and money is telling a different story, that's something to spend some time with and figure out what the disconnect is there. Can you see any conflict in values within yourself or places you've identified as being committed to or belonging to, and how and why? So we're kind of connecting the dots of identity here. And this is a good exercise to go through as you explore And we're going to talk, you've already heard some terms like cognitive dissonance and being double-minded. This is where sort of the rubber meets the road, where you're really going to start finding out where those disconnects are. And then even within some of your favorite books and movies, if that is, maybe you've gotten some messages from books and movies that have led you to behave or act in some ways that are in conflict with what you believe your core values to be. So we can be really influenced by things that we're consuming, even if it's unintentionally, and you think that you're immune to that type of influence. You are not, and your subconscious is not. So this is, I heard an analogy the other day called, and they were talking about computer programming, and the programmers learn something called GIGO, which stands for garbage in, garbage out. And intuitively, for those of us that are parents, or if you have influence on any children in your life, you know that this is true. But sometimes as adults, we forget this fact. And we have a lot of malware, or maybe some viruses, or even just old programming running in our brain, which is good, which is why it's good to do an inventory like this, because maybe our brains are due for an upgrade. And, if we stick with the journey analogy, maybe our GPS has not been updated in a while, and there's a lot of new roads and better roads to travel, and some bridges that have been built that our GPS is not aware of. And we're maybe taking a path that is a lot more challenging than it needs to be, or leading us in a wrong direction. So we're going to wrap up for today. These are a lot of things to start to consider and explore a little bit further as we are putting the shape of our identity together, of where we are, and then as we want to move into the future. So I have another quote that is very poignant from A Christmas Carol. No space of regret can make amends for one's life opportunity misused. So that's the work we're doing here, even though it's challenging and not always easy. It is going to be very rewarding, because you definitely do not want to end up at the end of your life with regrets and no opportunity for being able to go back and change that. I am so proud of all of the work that you're doing, and I know that it is going to be so rewarding, and that you are going to really be owning it this week as we move forward into our second full week of being alcohol free. And then congratulations for being, I know this is day 7 of the homework, but it is day 11 of no alcohol, which is amazing. So congratulations. You are doing it and owning it, and I'm so proud of you.